Technological shift that's needed. We've talked about the policy regulatory shift that's needed to get us to 2050, inshallah. The third one, what soil does 2050 grow in? What grassroots changes are needed in our communities? Quite often, the tech develops divorced from the rest of the community, divorced from the mosques, the youth groups, the situation on the ground, those who are working in the communities, on the streets. It's being produced in almost elite circles where people are talking about fintech, when actually the majority of the young Muslims today are struggling to pass their maths exam. What do we need to change in the soil, in the grassroots, in order to reach that Vision 2050? Thoughts? It's getting to the point where people are getting tired, brother. Speak up on the video.
So I'm going to come from a slightly different angle. I've only been in the Muslim community for 12 years, so you could see me as being an outsider. And I really appreciate, because I'm a revert myself, I really appreciate the level of talk and communication you're coming out with today. What do I mean by that? So I work in an industry, and I've worked in a variety of industries over my career, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has privileged me to be in. And I see a disadvantaged youth. And I quite often feel very sad about that, because I see other communities who are actually less qualified to move forward. But our youth has a problem in belief in themselves. And what you said earlier is manifested in confidence and level of language, etc. Although very educated and have the certifications and everything they need, there's still something lacking. We should be the absolute best, and we should push, but we settle for less. The seven magnificent seven, what we all know, as somebody mentioned earlier, Google. You mentioned Steve Jobs earlier. I missed your first part of the talk. Steve Jobs also said in his memoirs, if we could be bothered to read them, thank you, is because he said, I haven't invented anything. I don't know if this is factual. He said, my $10 watch tells the same time that my $50,000 watch is going to put in the future. Think about that. And when you look at that, where is our potential? So the issue we're facing right now is not thoughtful leaders, but is people in our generation who can inspire. But we've got to put that seed in now, otherwise we're not inspiring them to become confident. We all go through different journeys, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the greatest, and He's giving you the biggest tools, and whatever skill set you've got within you, believe in it, and work that with the ummah, that will lay the seeds. Assalamu alaikum.
So I love your answer. We need inspirational leaders. By the way, how many of you heard of the great and inspirational Abdul Fattah Jandali? Hands? How many of you have heard of Abdul Fattah Jandali? Because I guarantee you, all of you have either a product or you know a friend who has a product made by him. Abdul Fattah Jandali's name was Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs' dad was Syrian. When he was born, his name was Abdul Fattah Jandali, but his family gave him up for adoption and he was raised by Mr. and Mrs. Jobs. Without the basic building blocks of a civilization, the family, the mosque, the community, you will have the next tech bros of the future, the tech giants, the next president of the United States, the next king of England will grow up in your houses, and they will not be Muslim. So, what do we need to change? Do we need to change our masajid, the way that they operate? Do we need to change our community groups? Do we need to change our role models? Do we need to change the way that we move as a community, the way we organize ourselves, with gatekeepers, what needs to change for us to get to 2050? Because with every question I'm asking, you need to think about where we're going to be in 2050. You need to think to yourself, in order for one of us to discover the cure for cancer in 2050, what do we need to do? Because that child is now. You know, there's a great speech by JFK, the 35th American president. If you haven't watched it, I recommend watching it. He's at Rice University, and he's standing there. This is 1961, and he delivers a speech where he says, he doesn't talk about communism, he doesn't talk about racism, sexism, all the problems America had. He says, we're going to land a man on the moon before the end of this decade and getting back to Earth safe and sound. And in order to do that, we will have to invent metals that do not exist. We will have to spend every single ounce of our ability to do that. But we do this not because it is easy, but because it is hard. Guess what? 1969, before the end of the decade, Neil Armstrong's on the moon. Brothers and sisters, let me tell you, like this point, maybe the most important tech thing that you could do is revolutionize our business. Maybe it's also revolutionize the way we parent. Maybe it's revolutionize the way that we go about our marriages. I was giving the whole talk on the life of Salahuddin, and my friend, he was just introducing me and then coming off at the end. But he said one sentence at the end, which was better than my entire talk. When I got off the stage, he said, I guess the problem is, we all want Salahuddin, but no one wants to be his father or mother. In order to get to 2050, you need to be the father or mother of Salahuddin, and you need to start thinking like that and acting like that now. We need to encourage that child. The last thing, so we've talked about the tech shifts that are needed, we've talked about the regulatory shifts that are needed, we've talked about the soil shifts that are needed, and from the grassroots. The biggest shift, the hardest shift, the most difficult thing that needs to change for us to truly become the architects of this Amanah, of Vision 2050, is not going to take place in Silicon Valley, it's not going to take place in our mosques, it's not going to take place on the streets or in politics, it's going to take place here, between our two ears. That is where the biggest shift needs to take place. The way we think, the way we move, what we prioritize, that needs to change. As a community, we have become used to thinking like people who are on the back foot. As a community, we've become used to thinking that others are going to bring their innovations and we're going to latch onto it. As a community, we've got used to thinking that someone else is going to come and save us. How many times have we raised our hands and said, why aren't they helping us in Palestine? When the people of Palestine are waiting for us, not waiting for somebody else. That's the biggest shift that we need to make. And that shift of becoming an architect of that Amanah, that shift requires us, when we imagine who is going to be the next big tech bro or tech girl in the future, then we imagine ourselves, not someone else. That shift requires us to sacrifice today for tomorrow, and that shift requires us to make some difficult choices. Let me tell you a story. We talked a lot about Salahuddin, so I'll tell you a story from the life of Salahuddin. You know, we all know that Salahuddin conquered Jerusalem, right? And that's why he's famous. He took back Jerusalem for us. We're forever grateful. We've lionized him. He's a hero for the whole of the Muslim world and beyond. After he conquered Jerusalem, most of his army went away. They went home. They'd been fighting for so long. So he was left with only a few in Jerusalem. But guess what? The third crusade now came. The king of France, England, and Germany, all three arrived on the shores of the Holy Land. And Salahuddin was left with the problem. See, imagine if the Crusaders were arriving here, and Jerusalem is over here. There's another city on the opposite side called Ascalon. Ascalon is a very, very important city strategically because it sits at the mouth of Egypt. If you take Ascalon, you take Egypt. And if you take Egypt, you take North Africa and Hijaz. You conquer everything because Egypt is the breadbasket at that time. Very strategically important. Over here you have Jerusalem. Not strategically important at all. Religiously, very important. But if you conquer Jerusalem, you have Jerusalem. If you don't, you don't. That's it. Jerusalem is only Jerusalem. Ascalon is the whole of the Middle East. And the Crusaders have landed here. He finds out that night. What should he do? He only has one army, there are not many. Should he stay in Jerusalem and defend Jerusalem, which he has spent all this time, effort, money, and lives in trying to take back? Or should he go and defend Ascalon? If he stays in Jerusalem, the Crusaders go to Ascalon, take Egypt and all of North Africa. If he goes to Ascalon, the Crusaders take Jerusalem. He loses everything he's worked for. And he has to make the decision tonight. What should he do? This comes back to that earlier point, right? You can't have your cake and eat it. Sometimes the price of leadership is making impossible decisions. So I ask you, you're all in that seat. What would you do? Please raise your hands if you would go to Ascalon and defend it and lose Jerusalem. Quite a few. Okay, how many of you would stay in Jerusalem and lose Ascalon? Smaller number. This story, by the way, I've read like 12 biographies on Sahadin. This story is when I actually appreciated why he is who he is. And you will too. His army was there, his generals, they all stand around him. Like I'm standing here, they were surrounding him and they were shouting, "We need to go to Ascalon." And then somebody was like, "We're not going to give up Jerusalem, what are you talking about?" Someone was like, "What are we going to do? If we lose all of North Africa, well, how will we protect Jerusalem?" And they were fighting back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And Salahuddin said, "Guys, you've made your points. Why don't we all go to bed? And when I wake up for Fajr, I'll tell you my decision." Everyone went. No one slept. At Fajr, Salahuddin walked out of his tent. Everyone was lined up outside. And they said, "What did you decide?" He said, "I already made my decision at that time, but I just wanted you all to have a good night's sleep." I said, "What did you decide?" Look at what he decides. He said, "I sent a letter to the people of Ascalon, and I said, destroy your city. Destroy your city. Wipe Ascalon off the face of this earth. Don't leave one building. Don't leave two bricks on top of each other. Wipe Ascalon off the face of the earth, so that all that exists now is Jerusalem. And they must come towards it, and we will defend it with our dying breath." Brothers and sisters, the nerves of steel that it takes to give that order, and the nerves of steel it takes to carry out, the people of Ascalon destroyed their city. Even to this day, Ascalon is still just a village, when it used to be a huge city. They destroyed their own city. Why? Because to become an architect of Amanah, you need to sacrifice. You need to sacrifice. Nothing will come. Not the future technology, not the regulation, not the funding, not the grassroots, unless you sacrifice. That might mean that you sacrifice investing in your startup today to build the pipeline for the startups of the next century. That might mean that you stop focusing on your unicorn so that you can educate young people so they can get through higher education to build the unicorns of the future. That might mean that you give up your job, your role, to build so that the Ummah in tomorrow is going to be not just stronger, but building their own networks, their own data rails. No one can tell us what to do. And that might mean that you have all the tech skills in the world, but you spend your time and energy building the Al-Azhar of technology, so that when the technology is built, it will be regulated, and it will be regulated well, inshallah. Whatever you do, you need to sacrifice. Without sacrifice, we will never reach Vision 2050, the second version. We will go back to where we are, which is the first version, divided, defeated, and disunited. But with sacrifice, we will reach the stage, inshallah, where this ummah will go back to mapping the stars. This ummah will go back to finding the cure for diseases. And this ummah will go back to being a benefit to all of mankind. My brothers and sisters, I finish with this last point. As you leave Muslim Tech Fest 2026, remember this. You didn't come here for the beautiful stalls or the vibes. You didn't come here for the great companionship. And you didn't come here for the talks or workshops, even though they were fantastic. And you certainly didn't come here to celebrate the past. You came here to build the future. Jazakallah khair.